Hey, I'm Duke on Twitch. If you want to support the channel and greensunzenith.com, you can find my Patreon, merch store, and singles store where you can buy singles through TCG Player or Card Hoarder in the video description. If you want to get in contact, you can also find all that info in the description below for things like donation deck lists or just wanting to reach out. Alright, let's get right into it. Hey team, this was just a pretty super sweet match that I played that I thought I'd go back through. This is Naya Maverick against blue-black Reanimator. Obviously I didn't know what they were on, but we kept a hand that was pretty nice. This has mana acceleration, it has a bit of card advantage in Ramanap, it has green suns to quickly pivot our role, especially something like turn 2 Collector Oof can be lights out for a lot of decks, and then also green suns for 2 or 3 down the line could just lead to either some beaters or some interaction. And then of course Minsk there is really nice with Cradle. It's just a way to power that out pretty quickly. So, Tropical Island Pass. This was kind of scary because at this stage I thought they were going to be a Rug Delver deck holding up Stifle, and obviously here we kind of just have to play into Stifle. We have to play our Windswept Heath and fetch up to play the Noble or Ignobled. So when they tapped for blue and played Brainstorm, I was pretty happy. So I believe he would just go for Savannah and go for Noble Hierarch. This also means that by playing Hierarch out first, if they do deal with this with something like a Lightning Bolt, as I did expect it to be Noble Blue-Red Delver or Rug Delver, we have the Ignobled Hierarch as a backup, which is this red mana for Minsk. If that doesn't work, we also have Ramanap get back to fetch. At this point, I thought it might be Ant or some sort of build of Doomsday, but the Trop and the Underground Sea and the Duress and Cantrips just made me think this was going to be Ant. However, they took the Minsk and Boo over a Green Suns. Green Suns for Collector Oof, obviously fantastic against an Ant deck in game 1. Potentially because I had 2, they went for Minsk, as Minsk also just closes out games very quickly, especially when a Minsk would create a 1-1 Boo, it would make it a 4-4 Boo, and then double exalted creatures would mean it would be 6 on the first attack, which is pretty crazy. We draw Trailblazer Torch, a new piece of tech in this build because it is running a Stoneforge Mystic package. I did want to have a way to get the initiative, and I've been seeing a few players like Jason Murray playing around with it in Death and Taxes. Definitely check out Jason if you haven't already on Twitter. And I don't have access to the green initiative creature just yet due to his MTGO price, but Torch is pretty cool. It's also kind of nice with Collect Oof because it allows you to get some value off the equipment by getting the initiative without having to equip, of course. So that's pretty nice as well. Especially in this position, we're looking at Green Suns here for Collect Oof to just make sure we don't lose the game to a deck like Ant on as early as turn 2 or 3. And the Torch the next turn allows us to start generating some sort of advantage without even having to really do anything with it, which is really nice. So I believe here we play the Ignobled Hierarch, which is free thanks to Cradle, Green Suns for 2, and we go for Collector Oof, which I was pretty happy at this point. I was thinking, we've got this tied up. Maybe our opponent is playing something like a main deck Abrupt Decay. I have seen Caleb play around with that in Legacy Ant, but I felt really good. So here we get to untap, and I believe we draw just a land, which is fine. Here I was thinking, all right, if they're on Ant, do I want to hold up something like act like I have some sort of endurance effect? Do I want a Green Suns for Questing Beast? That was the other option here. But I felt like Torch just getting it down this turn would be really nice. Get that 5 damage going. The counters on Oof, of course. I didn't do the math in my head, but I felt it was a similar style of an aggressive approach compared to getting Questing Beast. So I went with the Torch, which is really nice. Got a forest out of the deck, and then something happened. Something happened that I did not expect, and it caught me a little bit off guard. Entomb. Okay, well, now we're seeing Elishnorn, which I haven't seen for a long time. And kudos to my opponent, obviously trying out some new things with kind of like a blue-black Reanimator deck, but looking at this board of an 0-1, an 0-1, a 2-2, and what was going to be a 1-1 Dryad Arbor, I really hope they don't have a way to get this Elish Norn back. So here, we kind of hope they don't have something, and I believe they have an Exhume. That's fair. All right. A turn 4 Elish Norn isn't too bad. So what are my outs here? We have Swords to Plowshares. We have Karakas as just the main ways to get rid of Elish. So what we want to do with the initiative, I thought, was instead of going aggressive for Forge, seeing they're at 16 life and going towards Trap, we should Lost Well. We have to try to dig. So let's try to get a little bit lucky here. We see Wasteland and Minsk. We put them to the bottom. And of course, Streamer's Guide, we draw Karakas. So we Karakas the Reclaimer, sorry, the Elish Norn. We go and get Dryad Arbor. And then I just keep building out my board here by getting another creature. This was pretty interesting. They actually forced the Green Suns for 1, which to me makes me think they don't have a way to put the Elish Norn back into their graveyard and then reanimate it again, and they're just trying to stifle me a little bit on mana. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting one. I wasn't too sure if they were actually scared of something else. But here we just see a reanimate on our own Ignobled Hierarch, really just a playback by our opponent trying to get something on the board to steal the initiative. Here we get to stash, get a little bit of a creature token. And here I actually made a mistake. I should have actually used the treasure token for mana instead of the Karakas, just in case I wanted to hold that up. But here I tapped it, kept the treasure around, attacked with Beast, obviously with Vigilance as well. This means we have 2 creatures to block with, and our opponent here just kind of scooped it up, which is fair enough. They didn't really have that great of a start. You know, the first 3 or 4 turns was just kind of pondering and duressing, but luckily, we also have a game 2 for you. So sideboarding wasn't too different either. Let me have a quick look at the deck if I can. So this is the deck list. And what I kind of did was, I believe, the Stoneforge Mystic pack is usually against Reanimator. I just cut the 2 bolts and the mums. I brought in the Macabres and the Surgicals, of course, as Graveyard Hate. I brought in the Hushbringers because they stop things, I believe, like Atraxa and Archon, which I thought was relevant. They do turn off our own endurances, but we do have Macabres and Surgicals as additional ways to deal with that. I brought in the Deafening Silences, and I believe I actually brought in the Blasts and the Sylvan Library, thinking of Show and Tell, and the Minsks I just dropped. Just a little bit too hard. So 13 out, 13 in, which is pretty huge, but I feel like all these cards have a bit of a role. So here we are in game 2. What do we keep? So we keep a pretty sweet hand. This hand has Endurance plus green card. It has 2 lands to allow us to develop our mana base. It has Pyroblast as early interaction. It also has Hushbringer, which is obviously great against cards like Archon and I believe Atraxa, but isn't great against the Endurance plan. So potentially what we could do is, against a really aggressive start, Endurance their graveyard, play a land, hold up Blast, play a land, play Hushbringer, and then hopefully win from there. But this all round is a hand I can't really see a fault with. Really happy to keep this against Reanimator. All right, so obviously on the draw, they go turn 1 Petal, Petal, Show and Tell. So this is where we had a few options. We can put in an artifact. We don't have any artifacts. Okay. We can put in a creature. All right, so we can put in Hushbringer. That would stop something like Archon or Atraxa from hitting, because I believe both of them are ETB effects. We could put in the Endurance. Doesn't really do a whole lot when they have nothing in the bin other than Lotus Petals. The Macabre is obviously not a card we want to put in. So for creature, we have the Hushbringer. Enchantment, look, we could put in the library, but probably not the most effective play with what we have in hand. We also have put in a land card. And honestly, when I'm thinking about what's going to be coming down, I think about some sort of draw effect. So I think about Atraxa, I think about Archon. Grizzlebrand we don't have a great play against here. I think if anything against Grizzlebrand, it's probably the Sylvan Library I'd want to put down, just because it will allow us to hopefully draw into some sort of removal piece. The land is also interesting because it could allow us to play a land next turn, top deck Swords to Plowshares, and be able to protect Swords to Plowshares from some sort of Force of Will effect. Or, of course, do something like play Taiga, draw Karakas, Karakas and Grizzlebrand, hold up Pyroblast. So there's a few options here, but my thought was Hushbringer is probably where I want to be, so we put in Hushbringer. And of course they put in Jin Kataxis. So, looking back, with hindsight. They have one card in hand. They put in a Djinn, which at the beginning of their end step, draw 7 cards. If I put in the Taiga or the Wood of Foothills and went and got a red source and blasted this, next to game over. But obviously one of those things where we had a discussion, thought about it, and we were like, you know what? Let's just go with Hushbringer. So what do? We allow them to draw 8. They go to discard and discard a Daze, which kind of makes me think that they either have another one or they just don't really value the Daze because they don't have an island in play. We go to deal with the Djinn, thankfully get rid of it, and get in with Hushbringer. But now our opponent has a fresh 7. We still have a pretty good hand, let's be honest. Like, we have Ferromacabre and Endurance for interaction if they deal with the Hushbringer first. Otherwise, the Ferromacabre by itself is quite nice. And then just the Green Suns to even start building out things. So here, Animate Dead goes after the Jin-Gitaxias, but we do have Ferromacabre, so we get to live another turn. So we untap, draw, we draw land, which isn't too bad, because here we just get to play the library. And I played the library because I really just want to start drawing quite aggressively off it for things like Swords of Plowshares, maybe another Ferromacabre, something like that, just to keep a big fatty off the table. So Brainstorm hits the table, Lotus Splitter comes into play, which means they can have something like Entomb into Reanimate. They go for Elishnorn again, they have the Reanimate, and of course, with the Hushbringer in play, we couldn't Endurance there. We do draw the Fairy a little bit too late, but that's all good. So here, I believe we just take 8. We just want to draw as much as possible to keep it out of the deck. We play 3 mana, which allows us to hold up the Endurance here, which is quite nice with the backup of Fairy just to keep other threats off the board. Because, to be fair, you know, the Elishnorn right now is a 4-turn clock. I guess 3 if you take into consideration the Wood of Foothills putting us to 12, but all in all, not feeling too bad. I think if anything, I'm happy that this Elishnorn isn't something like a Traxa or Griselbrand. Right. So the Ponder was a shuffle. They Cabal Therapy Swords of Plowshares, which is fair enough. They know about our hand now, though, and they attack in with Elishnorn. We go to 9, we get to untap. I do put in the Endurance, and they actually daze it, which is pretty interesting. There's not too much at the moment that they're wanting to protect other than potentially a flashback Cabal Therapy, but obviously they just want to keep threats off the board. So we draw Wasteland off the top, Deafening Silence, and Night. I don't want to draw anything as it does take a full turn off if they deal with, say, the Night. The 4 life is pretty relevant when a 4-power creature is opposing us. But here we have a Night, which would be a 1-1 in play, thanks to -2/-2 from Elishnorn, but +1/+1 from the Windswept Heath. So Night's great here because it is an answer to the Elishnorn in tutoring up Karakas. So here we play Night. When we're still in it, It's turn 4. Opponents had a pretty good time, but we see a Ponder here. The Ponder is another shuffle, and they get in with the Elishnorn. We obviously don't want to block with anything. We could go and get Dried Arbor there, but of course it can't block. It would only pop the Knight up to a 2/2, so no real relevance. The only reason to get Dried Arbor there is that if you just don't want it in the 75 or in the cards left in the deck, but I think they're happy to keep the fetch. And here we have a pretty nice top. So what we did here was put, I believe, Green Sun Zenith back, and then Endurance on top, which, although we're at 4 life, we kind of get a free draw off this thanks to Canopy, because you get to play Canopy. We have 5 mana including Canopy, or 1 mana in Canopy and then 3 mana, which is representing draw a card, draw Endurance, and then 3 mana to cast Endurance. So really happy with that setup. I was thinking a little bit about Stifle, so actually in my second main phase here, I just fired off that sort of plan of draw a card, use Karakas, hit the Elishnorn. They go for an Entomb on Grave Titan as just a non-legendary threat, but obviously from the Cabal Therapy, they know about the Ferromacabre, and we have Endurance as backup, so I believe they take a draw here, and that's it. We take the game. So pretty cool, pretty old school kind of take on Blue-Red Reanimator in regards to the legendary creatures and, you know, Grave Titan effects we saw. But yeah, I just thought it was a really cool game. Hope you guys enjoyed this kind of content. Yeah, hope you're all doing well. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.